Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 13th of August, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information for your community and village, and you can do that very easily by listening to NOAA Weather Radio, Marine VHF, weather.gov/Alaska has information online, and you can always call the Weather Info line at 800-472-0391. Now, many of you have found us on Facebook. If you haven't yet, the address on your little search bar is NWS Alaska, and today we posted information there about an upcoming event that could put down a decent amount of rain across parts of south central Alaska. We're still watching that carefully, and it's not a sure thing yet, but that's a place you can go to kind of get in on some of the discussion around the very standard forecast that tells you if it's going to be partly sunny or if there's a chance of snow or how high the temperature is going to be or how strong the wind will blow. On Twitter, you can always find us on NWS Alaska, or simply by using the hashtag AKWX, that's short for Alaska Weather. And if you just want to share a weather photo on Facebook or on Twitter, that's always a great way to add a little bit of information there that tells us you're talking about Alaska weather, and that helps us see that you're talking about something of interest to us, even if we're not exactly followers of each other. That's a great way to do that. Juneau, Anchorage, and Fairbanks also have NWS accounts there, so just change the name and you'll be off and running. YouTube's a good way to get your daily afternoon map briefing. About 3:45 to 4 o'clock, you'll see that show up on YouTube, and you can get a quick check, about 2.5 minutes or so on your cell phone, mobile-friendly information that tells you what's going to happen around the entire state for the next 2 days, including a forecast about tonight. You'll see the same maps here as we get into Alaska weather. Now here's a look at the satellite picture. The big player that's shaping up across the Pacific right now is this plume of Pacific moisture. It never really turned into typhoons. There are some other ones out there that seem to be beefing up a little bit further south. But a lot of this moisture is traveling along in the jet stream, and if this can start moving a little bit further northward by the end of the weekend, say about Sunday night and into Monday, there's a chance that some of that could be pointed towards south central Alaska. Being that this is Unalaska, here's Shemya, and here's Eastern Asia, this is a way off. So this is in no danger of just jumping right into south central Alaska tonight. This is several days away. But there's plenty of moisture moving in the tropical Pacific and has moved away from that period now and moving toward the Gulf of Alaska in the coming days that we're going to keep close watch on. Out across the west, things are pretty stable across the Bering Sea. High pressure still in charge, but we're starting to see this pattern change a little bit to where showers are becoming a little more likely in the coming days across the west. And there's a zone of low pressure here and a fetch of moisture working up across the central and eastern Aleutians that does have a decent amount of moisture with that as well. So a lot of this is moving towards southwestern Alaska and across the chain in the coming days. As it does that, it will bring an increased threat for rainfall for your area. Probably not as heavy as what we're talking about here across the Pacific right now, but again, signs that changes are happening in the coming days. Now, as you look at the visible satellite picture, you can see a lot of cloud cover massing across the central and southern parts of the Gulf. The southeastern panhandles really dried up today. A nice day it turned out with dry air across the northern and eastern Gulf. We'll be watching this area for a little bit of fog tonight. You'll see that in the map, but the latest information suggests that fog might not be that much of a problem as we were thinking about earlier today. So keep an eye on that, but again, it looks like a nice clear night for many. Around Prince William Sound, a dry day today, as well as areas up and down Cook Inlet and around Kodiak Island. You can see the next wave of low pressure, though, just west of Adak. Watch as that spirals in here. As you see on the visible satellite picture, you can see that counterclockwise motion indicative of low pressure. That is a void of air over your heads, and the more air that's missing, the lower the pressure goes in this case. And as you well know, the stronger the winds will blow. As this works its way northward and eastward, we'll see that moisture filling gradually, and eventually that'll bring an increased threat for rainfall across the southwestern coast. Up north, we see plenty of clouds. In fact, a lot of folks saw an overcast sky today. Many saw areas of fog throughout the day. There were even a few areas of showers developing across southwestern Alaska. Those were gradually traveling north and west, running up against the mountains. Didn't see a whole lot of lightning with that. That may have changed in the last hour or so, but there were some pockets of heavier rainfall there. Again, that was slowly traveling north and west, and another band of showers just north of that. As we look at the overall weather picture here, low pressure is sitting across the Chukchi Seacoast. Just to the north and west, that pressure centers down to 1,005 millibars, and the leading edge of cooler air is indicated here by the blue line with the pointy triangles. Of course, the triangles tell us which way the air is moving, in this case to the south and east. High pressure sitting across the northern parts of the Yukon Delta at 1,023 millibars, and that's trying to hold the weather back across the Chukchi Seacoast. So we get more of a southerly flow across the western side of that high pressure circulation. Well, where all this meets up with the moisture in place and a little bit of sunshine, and of course the mountains play into that, and the moisture from the ocean, all of that turned into showers today. And again, there might have been a rumble of thunder out there. Didn't see a whole lot on the lightning detection system. And across the central and western chain, there's our wave of low pressure at 1,009 millibars there, working in a southwesterly flow out ahead of it. Back behind it, a cooler, drier northerly flow. Low pressure across the western Gulf, sitting at 1,020 millibars this afternoon, and a wealth of dry air out ahead of that, thanks to high pressure at 1,029 millibars for the southern Gulf. That has produced a beautiful day in southeast, a pretty nice day here in south central and around Prince William Sound. But if you look to the west, you can see if the weather overall is moving from west east, things are going to change in those very clear and dry areas today. And for many in the interior, it was a cloudy day with plenty of fog, especially across the northwestern coast. At times around Barrow and Point Barrow, there were periods of dense fog there as warmer air was lifting northward into the Beaufort Sea. Now, as we head into tonight, that frontal boundary up across the Chukchi Sea slowly dripping, yes, it is dripping, but dropping south and east across the coast. With that, we expect some light rainfall to continue, generally north of Kotzebue Sound, but probably for places like Kotzebue and Kivalina as well. Across the southern Bering, low pressure now taking command at 1,009 millibars. That southwesterly flow is allowing more and more wet air to move in toward places like Cape Newenham and up toward Bethel. High pressure sitting just inside of Norton Sound at 1,022 millibars, and we should still have a pretty clear sky from the Copper River Basin to southeast. Remember, I was talking about the fog chances tonight? Well, chances are that a lot of this fog will not be a major issue for most in southeast. Looks like that has been revised a little bit in the forecast. So again, keep an eye out for it, but it may not be as much of a problem as previously thought. And we'll probably see a few mountain showers there for the Alaska Range and the Talkeetnas and into the eastern Alaska Range. Now tomorrow there's an opportunity for some isolated thunderstorms around Denali and some of the northern sections of the Alaska Range and points east. But for the western Alaska Range, I'm not thinking that's going to be as much of a problem either at this point. It looks like we'll deal with some afternoon rainfall, especially on the western side. But the main issue will be rainfall moving into southwestern Alaska as low pressure nears the Pribilof Islands at 1,007 millibars. Watch for plenty of dry air across the Gulf. And again, it doesn't look like we're going to see any huge wave of wet weather for Friday across the Gulf or south central. Anything we see should be generally mountain related. Up across the Brooks Range, there's an opportunity for more rain there, especially in the western half. And this will be sliding north and east with time as high pressure is pushing this from southwest to north and east. And then we have another wave of low pressure across the western Gulf. That is allowing the next surge of warmer and wetter air to build into the north and western parts of the Pacific and the western Bering. So you can see the process is changing a little bit. We don't have a big high pressure system parked right over the Bering anymore. So things are moving around a little bit, and the forecast is, or the weather pattern is starting to kind of ungum itself a little bit. Low pressure by Saturday will be dropping southward into the interior. This should allow some cooler and drier air to break up the clouds a little bit across the middle and upper Yukon Valley, as well as areas south of the Brooks Range. But it is going to get kind of a focus for rainfall across the Yukon Delta, as well as southwestern Alaska and the upper Kuskokwim Valley. With that, a better chance for rainfall will probably start your weekend. Low pressure also moves into the Gulf. You can still see a wealth of dry air here across the north and eastern Gulf Coast. That's great news for southeast and the start for the weekend there. But what this does with the upper level weather pattern supporting that very wet Pacific air moving northward is it starts to add a lot more moisture to the northern Pacific and the western Gulf. So by Saturday night and Sunday, we're going to have a low pressure system that's pretty close across the southwestern Gulf. And if the jet stream and the upper level winds can grab a piece of that very wet Pacific air and push that northward, that could really open the door for some decent amounts of rainfall across parts of south central Alaska and Prince William Sound, as well as the Chugach and the Kenai Mountains. So we're keeping an eye on that as we get into Sunday night and Monday. That's a little bit beyond the weather maps we're showing here, but make sure you tune in tomorrow and again on Saturday to get an update on that rainfall, if that is something that's important to you and your community. Now, as we go ahead into the temperatures tonight, notice with sunshine in southeast, you get nothing but low to mid 60s. What a gorgeous day around Juneau and Sitka at 65 degrees there. Ketchikan and Annette were both in the mid 60s, 63 in Yakutat. Even Prince William Sound, a beautiful day there today. Hardly a drop of rain anywhere in south central southeast. Looks like temps are in the upper 60s there for Valdez and Cordova, 68 in Seward, 67 in Kenai. A little bit cooler in Homer this afternoon, Middleton Island also 61. And just shy of 70 at 3 o'clock there in Anchorage. Probably got a little bit warmer than that where you are if you're watching from Anchorage tonight. Palmer and Wasilla, there, you probably never said that before, have you? Palmer and Wasilla have seen temperatures that are above average again today, and 63 in Talkeetna, 68 around Glen Ellen and Golcana, 62 for Northway, and in the 50s there for Eagle. Now, as you get up into the middle Tanana Valley, it was 57 degrees. Healy and Fort Greely also in the upper 50s with 61 in Fort Yukon, 56 in Tanana, 55 around Arctic Village. Just 1 degree cooler for Anaktivik Pass after a cooler week last week. 40s and 50s for the Arctic coast. Barrow was 47 degrees with areas around Prudhoe Bay and Atkasuk in the low to mid 50s. Wainwright 49. Kivalina showed 50 degrees. Kotzebue 53, 49 in Nome. South and western Alaska saw temperatures generally in the mid to upper 50s. McGrath was 57, Unalakleet 52, 61 in Dillingham with King Salmon at 56. Lake Iliamna was just shy of 60 degrees. And we saw temps around Chignik at 57 degrees with Cold Bay and False Pass in the 50s and 60s. Sandpoint was warmer this afternoon at 63. The central chain made it into the lower 50s. Shemya was 53 and St. Paul and St. George were both at 52. Now, overnight low temperatures, as you've probably noticed in the interior, are starting to feel a little fallish out there. Many locations are reporting temperatures in the 30s and 40s for a little bit of a change. You can see that's fairly widespread for tonight, especially in the eastern interior. Upper 30s for many locations, and some of those valleys that aren't on the map there that we're showing as far as a pinpoint temperature, probably dipping into the 20s. We've heard that's happening out there, especially way out in the bush. So if it's that time for you, send us a picture of something interesting happening as the weather's changing. Love to see that. Lower to mid 40s across the coastal plain and the Arctic coast tonight. Norton Sound seeing temperatures in the mid 40s, closer to 50 around southwest and the YK Delta. Upper 40s and lower 50s for the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern chain, 52 in Kodiak, upper 40s for many in southeast, and lower 50s as you head out toward Cake, Klawock, Ketchikan, and Craig. As you get into tomorrow, don't look for a whole lot of change in southeast. Should be another nice day for most places there. Mid to upper 60s in some cases, even warmer around Haines and Skagway and Juneau. Mid 60s for the middle Tanana Valley and westward toward Tanana itself. Upper 60s for the Cook Inlet region. Lower 60s around Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island closer to 62 degrees. Upper 50s to low 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. 53 in St. Paul and St. George. Around 50 degrees for St. Lawrence Island and Gamble tomorrow. Kotzebue Sound temperatures back in the mid 50s and the Arctic coast in the mid 40s around Barrow and westward. Eastward, Prudhoe Bay could really see a very mild day at 57 degrees, so enjoy that while it lasts. Flying weather includes IFR conditions flirting with the coast generally in the morning. Some improvement will be seen in the afternoon, and there might be an opportunity for a brief thunderstorm around the northern Alcan border in the eastern parts of the Brooks Range. We're watching for a better chance for isolated storms across the central and eastern parts of the Alaska Range. The chance for storms to form now across the western Alaska Range looks to be greatly reduced. Out across the southern Bering Sea, IFR conditions are expected to linger, especially across the central and eastern chain. MVFR conditions will hover over parts of the Gulf in the morning, but you should see quick improvement, and there may be brief periods of IFR closer to the southern outer coast of southeastern Alaska. Otherwise, it should be smooth sailing for you. Anaktivik Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions develop by the end of the day. Same goes for Adigan Pass. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see MVFR. Watch for a better chance of rainfall on the western side in the afternoon. Rainy Pass, we'll see a chance for a shower, maybe a thunderstorm, but again, that's kind of an outside chance as things look by late this afternoon. Windy Pass, probably VFR conditions. We'll see a better chance for showers and thunderstorms developing there and points eastward as we go through the afternoon on Friday. Isabel Pass, VFR, except for some afternoon convection developing there, so watch for a thunderstorm. The pass conditions there around Mentasta, expect to see VFR conditions through most of the day. We'll watch for convection as far south and east as Tenita Pass, and also Portage Pass looks to see VFR conditions there, but not watching for showers or storms in that region at this point. And for Chilkoot and White Pass, as you just saw, VFR conditions are expected there for your Friday, so enjoy your flight. Freezing levels indicate that the surface freezing line now has jumped way up north once again. You can barely see it under the banner here. Otherwise, we're looking at freezing levels as low as 6,000 to 8,000 feet, some of that over the western interior and north of the Bering Strait. Otherwise, we've got warmer and wetter air building back in across the southern Bering and the Gulf of Alaska. Those levels as high as about 10,000 to even 12,000 feet the further south you go. Over southeast, you can see those levels around 10,000 to 12,000 feet at their highest around the Dixon entrance there. So that's a look at tomorrow morning. Icing potential then pretty far up there. Light to isolated moderate. Haven't seen a whole lot of icing reports today. Most of that's going to be up across the western Brooks Range and the northern coastal plain. Above 10,000 feet, also across the Alaska Peninsula out toward Nunivak Island and the YK coastline. And way out west across areas north of Shemya, that will be above 10,000 feet as well. The jet stream shows two interesting things that we're watching to see if they come together to produce that rainfall we were talking about a minute ago across south central Alaska. Here's the main jet, and this is running around 75 to 100 knots. This has the power needed to stir up storms, and it's guiding each of those impulses out of eastern Asia. So imagine these are just kind of sliding down here and into the Gulf of Alaska. Here's where the moisture is coming from. This is the moisture pump coming out of eastern Asia and trapping that Pacific moisture in and guiding that a little bit closer to the Gulf of Alaska. If these two lines can connect or merge or work together, then we have more of that moisture conveyor belt working its way into the Gulf of Alaska, and that's when we could have that opportunity for really good amounts of rain as we head into Sunday night and Monday. We're not there yet, and some models are not really sure it's going to happen at all. So again, watch this space for more information. As we get into 9,000 feet winds, you'll notice that we've got low pressure across the Gulf now, a little bit of a pattern change from where we were about a week ago. High pressure across the Gulf is guiding light winds in from the north and west across southeastern Alaska. Winds at 9,000 feet for the interior, running around 15 to 20 knots, and for the chain about 30 knots. For 3,000 feet, winds remain fairly light, a general westerly flow coming across the interior. Southwesterly winds are guiding low pressure across southwest is guiding southerlies up the southwestern coastline, also at 15 to 20 knots, and high pressure still in force here across the Gulf with light winds for southeast at this point. So turbulence, don't see a whole lot of that right now for tomorrow. Below 5,000 feet, you might run into a little bit of chop from Nunivak Island to the eastern chain and the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula, and also just south of the Dixon entrance and east of the Queen Charlotte's there. Other than that, things look to be smooth sailing. Watch for more clouds than anything else, and a developing chance for some convection, shower, and thunderstorm activity, mainly across the northern and eastern parts of the Alaska Range tomorrow. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with the sea ice edge and your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Virgo to Scorpius, the moon sure gets around.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Plough Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. Hey James, what holds up the moon?
Oh no, we're not doing the moon joke episode, are we?
No, but it's almost ready. I can't wait.
Okay, what holds up the moon?
Moonbeams, of course.
Oh, brother.
Thank you very much. Now that I've warmed up the crowd...
You didn't.
Let's talk about the moon. I don't want to spread rumors, but the moon sure gets around.
The Earth. It orbits the Earth, Dean, and as it does, so it appears to pass in front of a parade of constellations like Virgo and Libra and Scorpius.
Exactly. Next week, you can watch the moon go through some zodiacal constellations. Let's show you. Okay, we're facing west-southwest just after sunset, around 9 p.m. on August 16th. If you have a clear view to the horizon, you might, just might, see the slimmest of waxing crescent moons just above the tree line.
If you can see the moon, you might, just might, see the most elusive of the naked eye planets, Mercury, just to the moon's right.
You'll only have a tiny window to catch these two between sunset and when they set in the west. By 10 p.m., they're below the ground. But then we can see one bright blue star called Spica.
Spica is the brightest star in the constellation Virgo the Maiden. Let's show them the picture.
Wow, Virgo takes up a lot of space in the sky and is really hard to picture from just the stars.
I know, but she's been an important constellation ever since ancient astronomers figured out that the sun, moon, and planets pass through Virgo, along with 11 other special constellations. Okay, we've shifted our view to the southwest, and Virgo is to the right, and two stars of similar brightness are to the left. The first star isn't really a star. It's the planet Saturn.
Sweet, I love Saturn.
Saturn is in front of another zodiacal constellation, Libra the Scales.
Wow, that's even harder to picture than Virgo.
Yes, but Libra, like Virgo, was important because the sun, moon, and planets went through it over time as well.
And that means the other bright star on the left really is a star. It's the star Antares, the beating heart of Scorpius the Scorpion.
Exactly, the constellation of summer. I always love seeing Scorpius scuttle across the southern sky.
Now let's throw in the moon and see what will happen next week.
It's now 9:30 on the night of August 17th, and the sky isn't completely dark yet, so we'll keep our constellations outlined for you. The moon is a little fuller than it was on the 16th, but it's still a slim crescent. It's moved a little to the left or eastward, since we saw it the night before.
Let's move forward one day at a time and see how the moon moves. Here is August 18th. The moon shifted more to the east and is closing in on Spica. And on August 19th, the moon will appear just above Spica.
On August 20th, the moon appears at Virgo's feet and is heading towards Libra. And on the nights of August 21st and then 22nd, it has continued on its orbit around the Earth and has appeared to move through Libra.
On the night of the 22nd, the moon now is halfway lit up. We call that first quarter. And it is just above and to the left of Saturn.
Then on the 23rd, the moon will have continued on its way out of Scorpius. So in about a week, the moon has passed through 3 zodiacal constellations.
And that makes sense, since it takes the moon about 4 weeks to pass through all 12 zodiacal constellations, or 3 per week. So this week, look for the zodiacal constellations of Virgo, Libra, and Scorpius in the southwestern sky.
The crescent moon will turn into a first quarter moon between August 17th and the 23rd.
Be sure to bask in the moonbeams next week as you keep looking up.
I'll tell you why I'm grinning here in just a minute. Here's a look at the sea ice edge. The weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php will tell you all about the concentrations, the thickness, and the forecast over the next 5 days from our expert sea ice analysts here at the National Weather Service in Alaska. You can see the drift that I've drawn on here with the wind direction for tomorrow. It's going to start shifting to more of a west and southwesterly direction, and some of the ice here is opening up a little bit more around AKWx and a little bit north of Prudhoe Bay, and we'll probably see this edge retreat a little bit more to the north and east in the coming days. So again, watch for some changes where you are and maybe around the Beaufort Seacoast as well, as you're watching for changes there between Prudhoe Bay and AKWx. Now, why I'm laughing. Here's light winds around Haines today, not enough to keep a man in a bear suit away from the sow and the cubs there. You can read more about that from your favorite news source there, but that gave me a grin while we were watching Stargazers. Northwesterlies moving through the central and southern parts of southeast, 10 to 20 knots, 2 to 4 foot seas expected on the inside for Friday, and light winds coming down the coast from the northwest. Very light and variable up around Yakutat, and a little bit stronger as you head out toward Craig, with 5 foot seas there outside of the Dixon entrance. And southerlies at 15 knots with 3 foot seas blowing in toward Haines and Skagway. See, it doesn't get any better than that. News in Alaska is great stuff. Northwesterlies in Clarence Strait, 15 knots with a 3 foot sea, and light onshore winds from Yakutat down to Cross Sound, about 10 to 15 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas. A little bit higher seas there south of Sitka. Okay, moving on. South Central looking for light and variable winds for most of Friday up and out Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait, and across the north and western Gulf. 10 to 15 knot winds with 2 to 3 foot seas for Saturday. Really more of the same. Not much of a change in any one spot. Should be a nice weekend inside of Prince William Sound. There will be more clouds moving in, so not bright and sunny in all locations there. You'll see advancing chances for rainfall too as we get into Saturday night, and then again by Sunday night we're watching for heavier rainfall opportunities across south central Alaska. For Friday across the peninsula, 20 to about 15 knots or so on the Bering Sea coast side, only 1 foot seas inside of Bristol Bay on Friday. 20 knot winds there on the Pacific coast, 3 to 5 foot seas on a south and westerly flow. For Saturday, not much of a change, still looking at a broad southerly flow holding at around 15 to 20 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas across the Bering Sea coast and 4 to 6 foot seas there across the Pacific coast. Looks like areas south of King Cove and Sand Point have a better chance for seeing some slightly higher seas by the end of the weekend. Now for Friday in the Aleutians, the strongest winds will be in the central and eastern chain, looking at 20 to 25 knots with 6 foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, 9 to 10 foot seas there, generally from Unalaska to Nikolsky out toward Atka, and then things start to slow down a little bit from Atka down toward Kiska. You'll look for more of a variable and a westerly flow there. Seas about 3 to 5 foot and probably south of Adak and Atka. It could be a little bit higher, closer to 7 feet. And then you get back into the next wave of low pressure that's producing 25 knot winds with a 6 foot sea for Friday out in the west. And you can see that shift moving just a little bit more eastward as we head into Saturday. Winds diminish a little bit, but you get back into a southerly flow for the central and eastern chain. 4 to 5 foot seas in the central and east, and you get into 6 to 7 foot seas in the west with a west and southwesterly flow coming up to 20 to 25 knots. Southeasterlies are coming up the YK coast on Friday, 15 to 20 knots there, with 4 foot seas around St. Matthews, 6 foot seas around the Pribilofs. For Saturday, an east and northeasterly wind south of St. Lawrence Island around 15 to 20 knots in those areas, with southerlies hanging on from the Pribilofs out toward Kuskokwim Bay. And for the Arctic coast, you're expecting a westerly flow around the Beaufort Sea at 15 knots with 3 foot seas there, and south and westerly winds coming up the Chukchi as high as 25 knots out of Kotzebue Sound. That diminishes with flow out of the east, 15 knots for Saturday, and northwesterlies diminish to about 10 to 15 knots for the Beaufort Sea coast by Saturday afternoon. Recapping tonight's weather, we're watching for a mainly clear sky in southeast. It could be a few areas of fog, but the threat doesn't seem to be as bad as it looked this morning. Showers across the mountains in south central and developing rain across central and eastern parts of the chain in southwestern Alaska, with a weak push of cooler air coming into the Chukchi Seacoast for Friday. Low pressure brings in more rain for southwestern Alaska by Friday afternoon. A few mountain showers and storms for the central and eastern Alaska range, and a better chance of rain in the west for Saturday. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.